I feel like I'm blessed to be able to be a writer, and I can tell my story. I mean, just imagine, as a little kid, you're sitting in grandma's sewing room, and on the news pops, your mother's face and she's wanted for murder. You see things on TV or you watch movies and you think about, teen relationships and abuse, and it doesn't connect that it's happening to you. I left my corporate job. Was that crazy? Yes. Like, you got 3 kids and a mortgage. What are you doing? He said, you ain't gonna buy me. Yeah, I'm gonna buy you out. December, I told him I was gonna buy him out. In January, I launched my company. And he was choking me or something. And I grabbed that crowbar and I swung it. And I hit him. He's shocked, like, you hit me. And I said, yeah. And I said, either it's gonna be me or you. This is mine. You can't take it from me. If I fail at it, I fail. But it's mine. I'm January Curry, and this is my journey.
I know there's been a lot of speculation about my retirement and what I plan on doing next. And throughout my life, I faced many obstacles. The road has not always been clear. During those tough times, I felt alone. But I prayed and I asked God for strength. In my turmoil, God reached out to me, and it revealed whatever I was going through was a part of my true destiny. It was at that moment I made a decision to stop getting in the way of God's plans, because my true story of my destination was my journey.
January Curry is a professional screenwriter who owns a casting company and is a loving mother of 3 children. She is known for her work on movie sets such as Almost Christmas and Creed. But before her success, January endured moments of pain and abuse that she is now ready to share with the world, and by doing it in a big way.
I feel like I'm blessed to be able to be a writer, and I can tell my story. Because I've been writing since I use poetry and songwriting, to get my feelings out. And now that I'm able to be a screenwriter, I've used that and the connections that I have to take my elements from my story. And we actually just shot a short this weekend that will be a feature that is loosely based off of some elements, of my life. But that I'm able to, it's my story, but it's a lot of people's story, so being able to share it on a page and then put it in a picture, I think is huge, because a lot of people, don't know people's back when they meet somebody. Like, I don't know your story, you don't know mine, but the fact that I can take these, I have gone through this crazy stuff and put it on a page and produce it into which is a short film and will be a feature that, we just did. I mean, literally it's fresh, is amazing. It's a blessing. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I was raised initially by my grandparents, my mom's parents. My mother and my father, they were never married. It was like a little fling. So I'm her only child. Yeah. So my grandmother and my grandfather, they took me in and raised me, because my parents were slightly incapable of doing so. It wasn't because of money. It was kind of where they were in their lives at the time. But I'm my mother's only child. I was a surprise baby, let me say that. She was embarking on finishing her degree in her modeling career. And the first thing she would always say, I never wanted kids. And then if I had kids, I definitely didn't want a girl, I wanted a boy. So it was like, surprise, you're having a girl. So when she found out she was pregnant, she was kind of far along. And then not too long after, she gave birth, because she decided to push her car up a hill, because it went out one day, the hills in Cincinnati, and she went into premature labor. So when she went into premature labor, she was hemorrhaging. So I came super early. I came like 3 months early. And the fact that she already didn't want kids, she had me early. Then it's a girl. It's like she had decided to go ahead and put me in for adoption. Had a family, a mixed family, because she knew my father was from a mixed background. So depending on how I would look, they wanted to make sure that I blended well. But my grandfather came in the room and said, JD, they call her JD, if you don't want your child, it's okay, but at least give her to somebody in the family. And she's like, okay, whatever. At that point, though, the funny thing is my name being January, my grandmother named me. Because again, let me say it again, I don't feel neglected, but my mom, she didn't want kids. And the fact that she was going through a lot with her hemorrhaging and with the doctor still, she was kind of under. My grandmother was secretly visiting me, and she wasn't supposed to be because I was being put up for adoption. And the nurses said, well, you got to call her something. We're going to call her something. My grandma said, well, I'm going to call her January because she's born in January. So that's kind of how I got my name.
January's mother gave her up at a young age, but luckily, her grandparents were willing to take her in as their own.
With my grandfather, he was lenient. Anything I wanted, he called me his Stink. So anything Stink wanted, she got. But my grandmother, she was really structured. And she was an artist, and she was a seamstress. And she wanted to try to pass that along to us. But, as a kid, I want to sew. I'm not about to sew. I'm about to sit here and draw. And now I think back like, man, I need to hem these pants. I wish I would have listened. So, yeah, they were, even though it doesn't click to me, I was raised in a two-parent household, having both of them there. Their relationship was different from what I see, now. They weren't really close, but they maintained their household. And I was the only kid in it most of the time, so. The funny thing is that to this day, my dad thinks my birthday is on January 29th. And that's because he did not know about me until January 29th. He didn't even know I existed. He didn't know my mom was even pregnant. So, it's in the 80s. I just told my age. So at that time, the laws and things about adoption weren't as strict. So if my mother said, I don't know who the dad is, it's kind of like, okay, you don't know who the dad is. But it was my grandmother's doing again, Andre, you got a baby and you need to come up here. So on the 29th was when he came, and he's like, oh, I got a baby. I didn't even know. The strange thing is, even though I wasn't raised with both of my parents, I am close to both of them. So our relationships were my grandmother and my grandfather are my parents. My mother and my father, they're still my mother and father. But it's not as estranged as it may seem, because we did go to church every Sunday. I did go to church with him every Sunday. He's a pastor's son, so his way of doing things was totally different from my grandmother's, my mother's side of the family. They had a lot of conflict and turmoil as I was coming up. So I had a lot of people, kind of taking part in raising me. But, my grandparents were my core. So, but I did go to church every Sunday with my daddy. I've never seen my mother and my father really interact. And it never really dawned on me that they didn't really have a relationship. But I know at one point they had some kind of relationship. But it never really dawned on me. I've never seen them together.
Not only did January never see her parents together, but at a young age, she was about to experience what is heartbreaking for any child, which is to watch her mother be taken away.
I believe it was 91. My mother was incarcerated for murder. There's small moments where I remember seeing her on the news one day that she was wanted for murder. I mean, just imagine, as a little kid, you're sitting in grandma's sewing room, and on the news pops, your mother's face that she's wanted for murder and that's like a moment that I won't forget. So does it affect you? Yeah, it does, because, you have people that are they almost walk on eggshells around you. And even as a kid, it was like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, what are you sorry? What are you sorry for? Like, why are you upset? I'm not upset. I'm still going to school. I'm still playing with my friends, so it was different, but it was like my life,
January continued to live life the best she could until she got mixed up with some of the wrong people.
Well, I started at the School for Creative and Performing Arts in Cincinnati. So I was very active in the arts and in theater. And I was started hanging with a crazy crowd. Yep. And got kicked out. I ain't gonna tell nobody. I never told nobody that. But I was like, you know what? I want to go to Catholic school. My grandparents were Catholic, because I wanted to be a cheerleader. So I ended up going to a private Catholic high school. And I was always super bubbly and happy and a little kooky. Fell in love my 10th grade year with of course, I was a cheerleader. He was a basketball player, that typical story, with who was now my children's father. I started to separate myself from my friends, and they were not very They weren't happy about it. And I thought it was just because I wasn't with them as much anymore, but it was more because the relationship was kind of volatile. And I didn't know it as as a teenager. You're like, this is love. He just called me out my name. He loved me. But, as, time went on, you start to figure out, okay, you're in something that you can't get out of.
Little did she realize that she was headed in the direction of a dark path.
I don't even remember why, but I remember we were after school because he had practice and so did I, and we would walk to this little store near the school. And it was something that I didn't get, I was supposed to get for him, and I didn't. It was something really, really small. And I remember that he called me on my name, and then I ended up in some sticker bushes. And in the moment, I'm like, what is wrong? Like, why would you do that? What's wrong with you? And he grabbed me up and was like, oh, I'm sorry, but you just, you made me mad. And I'm like, okay. And I was confused in that moment, but I'm like, okay, he was just upset. And, you see things on TV or you watch movies and you think about, teen relationships and abuse, and it doesn't connect that it's happening to you. So when my friends started to notice those things, that's when they're like, okay, girl, you need to leave him alone. I'm like, okay, whatever. Y'all don't know. It was hell. But it felt like in the moment that this is what it felt normal. If you don't have anything necessarily to compare it to, you think it's right. And as dumb as it may sound in that moment, I can't even justify it. I can't even tell you, to go back to my 16, 15-year-old self, what was I thinking? So it was hell the entire time. But there were great moments. There were good moments. There were moments that, I love you. There were moments that he was very giving. But he was giving in a way where it was controlling, where he wouldn't hand you $100. He would just buy you a $100 pair of jeans. He wouldn't, he would never give me something to have control over what I wanted. He would just go and give it to me. You see what I'm saying? So he wouldn't say, hey, what do you want to eat? He would just take me somewhere. Hey, I'm going to take you to eat. So, it was subtle things that it started out subtle, but there were clear signs that even at, looking back, like, man, why didn't I see that?
After having her second child, January tried to leave, but just when she thought she was out, she felt she was being pulled right back in.
There was a time I ended up moving here, and I moved here with my 2 sons, moved to Georgia. I got up one day, I said, I'm done. I want to, and it wasn't even necessarily just him, but I knew career-wise and what I wanted to do, it wasn't there. So there were a lot of elements that made me want to move away from Ohio, but he was a big part of it. So I left, I came here. And a few months later, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. And I ended up going back. So I moved here knowing nobody, with no friends, no family, to Georgia by myself with my 2 sons. I thought that was it. And when I found out that I was pregnant with her, him and I started talking again, because of course I had to tell him. And he's like, you need to come home. You need to come back here, and we're going to be a family. We got these 3 kids. Mind you, at the same time, he had 2 other kids. But that wasn't even, what did it. And I know it sounds dumb. So I went back home. And I went back home and I ended up staying with him. And I had never lived with him because I had to, because I didn't have, an apartment there. I just gave him my apartment here. I just paid $1,000 to move into. So living with him I needed to do that. I had to, because at that time, I was a prisoner in his mother's house pretty much every day. And I needed to do that to really see what was happening in my life. Because besides us fighting and, because there were a lot of fights and they were physical and they were bad and there were charges pressed. But guess what? Charges always got dropped. That his father was the first black assistant chief of police of that city. And that was at the point where I was no longer allowing him to just hit me or just put his hands on me. It was me fighting back. So of course that would make him angrier. So this particular day, he had my car all day. So he pulled up in my car. I'm like, it's 9:00 at night. I'm stuck in here with these babies. Your daughter needed milk or whatever the case was. And we started arguing outside. And I popped the trunk because I knew I had a crowbar back there. And he was, I don't remember how he had me, but I know I was kind of over in the trunk and he was choking me or something. And I grabbed that crowbar and I swung it and I hit him. He's shocked, like, you hit me. And I said, yeah. And I said, either it's going to be me or you. Either you going to kill me or I'm about to kill you. And luckily his mother pulled up and kind of, broke us up. But that was the last day. That was the last straw. That was it.
Having to deal with the constant pain and the recurring battles, January managed to take her 3 kids and move back to Georgia, where she set her mind to build a foundation and to give her children something that she never had.
I think the biggest thing, the sacrifices that I've made for my children, there are a lot of nights and days that I work. I have been blessed as far as career-wise. I would say that because, even coming from an arts and music background, I've always been in that. I've always, entertainment was the reason why I moved here. But, as first it's like, okay, you 20-some years old, all these kids, how you gonna make this happen? But it was really to show my children that no matter what you want to be, and my kids laugh at me, and I tell them now, like, no matter what you want to do or what obstacles you have, if you want to be a clown, you better be the best daggone clown in the Ring Brothers that you can be. So I would sit them down, and I still do this now, have conversations. Look, mommy's gonna be gone all day. I gotta go to work. I gotta, go to the studio, or I gotta go be on this set, and I'm gonna be gone. But I want you to understand that I'm doing this, for you. So even, mommy, where you at, or where you coming back? But I want you to understand that I'm trying to, build a foundation that you don't have. Because if you think of, especially with people of color, we don't have inheritances. We don't have people passing us down businesses that our kids can work in and we can grow in. So my frame of mind has always been, I have to build a foundation for my children so that they can have something to pass on to their children, even if it's just a little bit. Because even with both my grandparents have passed, they raised me. There were fights, of course, there's always family fights when somebody dies, but there was nothing to pass down. There was nothing to give anybody. Wasn't no, money stashed away or jewelry somewhere or property. It was nothing. So the fact that this entire family, and I come from a big family, my mother's side, never thought to grow anything, to build anything, to give to the next generations. My frame of mind has always been that. Like, I don't care if I have to save $1 a day, or I have to, invest in the little Gerber things that come in the mail, insurance for my kids. I'm going to do something so that you guys don't have to work as hard. You still got to work, but don't have to work as hard. When you're trying to, follow your dream, like me in entertainment, and I have to work a 9 to 5, how do I work all day and try to build my career on this end and make money, at the same time? Because I got to pay the bills, but I really want to do this. So it took me, I had a goal before I was 30 to own a home. And I did that because I wanted my children to have a house that they could come home to. So I knew I kind of had to map out my life, like what job do I have to work? And I did. I worked in corporate America for years, 6-7 years, in a corporate position that I was the youngest, the only black, in, which I was blessed to be there because I worked my butt off. But at the same time, when I left the office, I'm on a set or I'm in a studio because I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So once I got into my house, I left my corporate job. Was that crazy? Yes. Like, you got 3 kids and a mortgage. What are you doing? But I knew God had bigger plans for me. So I took a risk and I jumped. And did the kids know? No, they didn't know that some days we had to go to the food pantry to get food. They didn't know that. They didn't know that mommy had to, pawn her class ring to finish paying the mortgage because I had a bigger plan. And it was hard. It was hard. That was hard. And my mother, which is a great thing because she was still supportive, she always say, whatever you want, Precious, because she calls me Precious, I'll support you. And to stay faithful, stay believing. I'm like, Mom, like, this is what I came here to do. Like, I came here to be in this industry. I came here to be successful here. I didn't come here to work, myself to the bone for somebody else from 401k. I didn't come here for that.
But before taking that risk, January suffered an injury that later showed itself as a blessing in disguise.
It was a simple accident. I fell. I'm not going to say where because there was a lawsuit. And tore my meniscus. And then some people like, oh, that's so simple. It's just your knee. Go to rehabilitation and you'll be cool. But it was in the midst of my plan. So that was actually what catapulted me to go ahead and, push forward in what I really wanted. I'm looking at it like, okay, I'm making this money and I'm saving this money, and I got to get closer to get me closer to what I want to do, as a writer and as a producer. And now I can't work. Like I can't, I was in a relationship at the time and that broke up, so like everything started to crumble in front of me. And even from this small little accident, people look at it like, okay, it's just a knee. But, I couldn't go to work every day, so I wasn't making any money. My mortgage, could have possibly fell behind. And it really took a toll on me emotionally, because at that moment I had no control again. Like, it took me back to that relationship, with their dad, where I have no control over my life. I can't do anything about this. I'm laying on this couch. I can't do anything that I'm used to doing. I can't get up and go work 2 jobs because I was, used to moving around. So as I laid there for a couple of months and went through my rehabilitation, it was amazing how still God provided and still made a way. Like, my lights never got cut off. I said, I can't even tell you how. My kids ate every day. They didn't even know that we were struggling. But I laid there, and when I finally took my last week or so of leave of absence, because they're like, January, what you gonna do? You gonna come back? You're not gonna come back? God put it on my heart and was like, don't go back. Don't go back. And I'm like, okay, God, how am I gonna not go back? I gotta pay my bills. I'm used to making this amount of money per year, and now I'm making nothing, or this little bit of money from my leave. Now you're telling me not to go. And while I was down, I started doing extra work as a background extra. And I know that sounds, it was crazy. Like, girl, you making $8 an hour. How are you gonna do it? But in the midst of me doing that, I met who became my boss. Somebody who became my boss. I met somebody one day. So I remember meeting him on set, and a friend of mine introduced me to him. He's a casting director. And I told him, I said, I'm gonna work for you. And he said, well, you are working for me. I said, no. I said, if you ever need an assistant, let me know. And I was at my corporate job one day, and I called him. And that's how I got in, really got into the industry. I called him. I said, guess what? I said, you let me know when you need an assistant. He said, yeah, okay. He called me one day. It was, come see me on Friday. I said, okay, cool. I interviewed and I got the job to be a casting assistant. And while we were, I was with him for a few years, it's like, January, what do you want to do? Oh, I'm a writer and producer. I always said, I'm a writer and a producer. He said, okay, cool. But what else you want to do? I said, I want to start my own casting company. And it was probably in October. He said, okay, then go ahead and do it. I'm like, what? He said, okay. I said, I'm going to buy you out. He said, you ain't going to buy me. Yeah, I'm going to buy you out. December, I told him I was going to buy him out. In January, I launched my company. It's great to work for other people. It's fine if that's who you are. But I knew that in order for me to have something again to give my children, even if you don't want to go into casting, you don't want to go into film and television, guess what? You got this company over here that your mama owns, and if you need a job, you can come work for me. So my thing is ownership was important. Me just taking my life and having control over it. So all those little things. And I have a friend that says, well, why do you got to be the boss? It's not necessarily about me being a boss, but me having, this is mine. You can't take it from me. If I fail at it, I fail, but it's mine. So just with the casting company and my production company, it's mine. So however it grows, however much it prospers, it's on me. I can't put it on anybody else.
While maintaining her 2 companies, January now prepares for the next phase in her life, which is to bring her mother home.
I don't know if anybody's ever, dealt with anybody being in jail before, but I'll tell you, living your entire life in a prison is hard. The hardest thing about it, and people think about it like, oh, you're going to see her through this glass. And it's not like that. It's not through a glass. When she was in jail before she was convicted, it was through glass. But once you're in prison, it is one-on-one. You can hug, you can do all that. So they had great things set up for as a kid. They had great things. They had like family day, and we could, play in the yard, and they have games and all kind of food. And they made it as real as they could. The hardest part is leaving, because all the barbed wire and all of the fences and the guards and even the checks when you come in, you gotta certain things you can't wear and can't take in, and that's the hardest part, because you have to leave and you can't stay and you can't come when you want to. So that's the toughest part. I just remember as a kid, having to go was the hardest part, because we would have so much fun while we were there, but I would always look up at the barbed wire and say, man, she can't go with me. I can't take, and I've taken my baby, when I had a baby, I've taken them there to see her. And a lot of people don't take their children or their family members to see people who are in prison, but you should, because that's all they have. That's all they hold on to. Like, their every day is waiting for those phone calls or waiting for those letters. That's all they have. So, I took my children. My grandparents took me every chance that they could, because, these people, even though, they committed a crime to be where they are, but what's going to keep them going every day? It's the people that they have back home, and knowing that the people at home are happy and successful. So my mother is an active part of my life. My mother is closer to my kids than my own dad, and he's in a free world. She goes back up for parole in November of 2018. So we're hopeful. I've looked at it like God is preparing me, because it's going to be a big change in my life, her coming home. So God is preparing me. And, she went up for parole previously about 2 years ago, and they denied it. And I'm like, man, why? Like, I got this house. My money's okay. I'm trying. God said, I'm not ready yet. And I know that, when she comes home, we got to rebuild a whole relationship. I'm a grown woman, having her mom, around for the first time every day. So that's going to be, work in itself. So I know that he has a plan, and I know that he wants me. So every blessing that I get in my life, either financially, career-wise, I know that he's setting me up to be able to be in a place that when my mom is home, my biggest thing is I don't want her to have to face any no's. If you want to start a business or you want to do this, you don't have to go and fill out a job application anywhere and somebody rejects you. Here, you want a business? Here you go. Here, you want to do this? Here you go. So I know that he's preparing me to be able to accept her in my life.
On the next, The Journey with LaMarr Woodley.
After the first round, I'm like, man, forget it. I'm not getting drafted. So I went outside. So I told my brothers, we all sitting out there. They're like, man, don't worry about it. I'm like, I'm going to make everybody pay.